in the process. There will be no slow motion.
Hello, comrades. Hello. Welcome to the Liberation Hour. This is Comrade Felicity coming at you live from WRFU 104.5 Radio Free Urbana. Folks, welcome back to the Liberation Hour. I am so excited to be here today on September 10th, 2025. Welcome, folks, back to the Liberation Hour. We have a lot to cover today, so why don't we jump on right into it. First, I have the top of the hour disclaimer. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign online community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU UCIMC. Folks, how are we all doing today? It is a Wednesday, it is 7 p.m., and so we are here back in the studio covering some news. I have some really cool stuff for y'all today. So this first 30 minutes, we're going to go ahead and cover some of the biggest news that we have of the week. And in the last 30 minutes, I will be playing for you the first half of my interview with Comrades Trevor and Grayson over at Fossil Free Illinois and Students for Environmental Concerns, in which we talk about all things climate, all things university repression, and we have a real good fun time. During the audio, you may hear me a couple times go, no, and that is because my cats love to get on my desk during the middle of these interviews. And so if you hear something kind of weird, that's probably what it is. I'll remind everyone before I go ahead and start playing it, but there we go. So first things first, I have a little announcement. Today, or I guess I would say earlier this week, Red Youth Rising was officially launched. Super exciting, right? I am really looking forward to the launch of Red Youth Rising and folks, really getting around tenant organizing and everything. That is our main focus here at Red Youth Rising. I'm part of the national committee. I am the media coordinator, and so if you're ever interested in organizing together, seek me out, folks. But yeah, Red Youth Rising officially launched. Go ahead and you can find us on Instagram. You can also go redyouthrising.org, and we will come right up on your screen. Get in contact with us. Let's organize, folks. This is for ages, I want to say 14 to 28 or 30. 14 to 28 or 30, so a lot of youth that fall into that category. And so this is super exciting. I cannot wait for us to organize together and really get this going, because I think this is an organization that's really, really worth investing in. We are affiliated with the American Party of Labor, and we are a communist group. We are trying to build class consciousness into the youth right now, and that's what we need to be doing, because there's a lot of stuff going on that I'm about to cover, and it's getting wild. So find your local Red Youth Rising chapter. If you're in Champaign, that's me. If you're in Chicago, that would be Comrades Keegan up in Chicago. Please reach out, organize with us, and let's get it going. Super excited. Anyway, so I have a few stories here tonight, but in light of recent events, I want to go ahead and cover something that has just happened today, which is the shooting and killing of one Charlie Kirk. He is a right-wing political commentator. He is the founding person of Turning Point USA, which is a conservative youth movement. And he's a talking head for the Trump administration. I know a lot of people right now are currently celebrating this. And I want to put a pause on that real fast. I want to say, when we look at political violence, when we see political violence, and this is the same situation, or not, well, a similar situation to what happened with the shooting of the healthcare CEO Brian Thompson with suspect Luigi Mangione, when we are looking at vigilante justice, ultimately, vigilante justice is not going to achieve working class, what the working class is looking to achieve. Vigilante justice is not the way to go here. Charlie Kirk, I'm not going to launder his image and say he was some kind of good person. He wasn't. Charlie Kirk was a white nationalist. He was a lot of things. He believed in the Great Replacement theory. He was a talking head for the Trump administration and all of the horrible, horrible things that they are carrying out right now. But the point still stands. We cannot condone vigilante justice as a way to move forward. Have I ever liked Charlie Kirk? No, not in a million years. He's an op, or he was an op. But Charlie Kirk was a human being. And at no point should we condone vigilante justice against people when it is ultimately the larger systems at play that we need to be changing, that we need to be looking to change. Charlie Kirk was not actively physically harming anyone at that time. Charlie Kirk was speaking. What he was saying was abhorrent, and it is political violence, what he is saying. But that does not condone, nor does it warrant us to carry out vigilante justice in such a way. And I know that a lot of right-wing talking heads right now who are saying thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk are currently condemning what's going on, are also simultaneously out for blood against leftist people and would be perfectly happy to say terrible, terrible things if this were to happen to a leftist person, a leftist talking head, or a person who is talking about leftist values. But that really doesn't matter at this point, because they have no principles, they have no values. We cannot look to these people and say that they somehow that what they're saying is important. It's not. We cannot look to them for a moral compass. What we can do is we can look to our principles as leftists and say that on principle, this was wrong. This does not meet our goal of collective liberation. This meets our bloodlust. And frankly, all humans to some extent can be violent. That's a given. But that does not mean that we cannot grow and change. And that does not mean that we should allow things like this to happen. I completely understand the feelings of celebration after this. I get it. I really do. I don't want people to feel as though you're being alienated because of that. But I do want folks to understand the larger implications of this. We cannot celebrate something like this because what we should be doing right now is organizing. That's what we should be doing right now. Celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk is not getting the working class any further with liberation. It is not getting us any further with collective organizing, and it is not pushing us any further towards what we really need to be, our ultimate goal should be, which is taking down the capitalist class. That is what we should be actively organizing around. And I do get it. I do. For leftists out there who think this is a win, I get it. I understand those feelings. But that's a reaction. That is a reactionary opinion. I can't say that I haven't felt the same in certain ways because I'm a person. I'm a human. But I also, your first thought, you're not totally at fault for. Your second one, no, that's a different story. We can understand these things in multitudes and in different dimensions. And we can understand that Charlie Kirk has carried out a lot of harm. I'm not going to launder his image like so many liberals are doing right now and say he was somehow a good person. He was not a good person, but that does not mean he deserved to die. Frankly, it does not mean he deserved to die. And folks who are saying this, folks who are lauding this as somehow a political win for leftists and for the working class, you have another thing coming. Because working class people, we are not any closer to toppling the oligarchy and toppling the capitalist repression and the bourgeois class than we were before Charlie Kirk was shot. For those who have seen the video, I am being one of them. It is quite graphic, so I do not think that we should be watching it, especially because it is so bad. It is extremely graphic, and I'm not going to describe it at all because again. It is truly a graphic situation. And we have to think about the people who were there as well. Not only was Charlie Kirk shot today, but people who were there probably thought a mass shooting was happening. And on that note, another mass shooting also happened in Colorado at a high school in Evergreen. We have to understand that the violence that is happening, especially even against someone like Charlie Kirk, who was a ghoul. I'm not going to sit here and act like he wasn't. He was. we cannot allow ourselves to get bogged down in this vitriolic hate when what we should be doing is organizing. What we should be doing is saying, okay, this happened. Where's my coalition at? You know, that's the point. That has always been the point. The point was to not carry out senseless violence against people who frankly do not matter. Charlie Kirk mattered to people who are frankly crazy. He said some crazy opinions. But that's that. The working class, what we need to be doing is looking at this and saying, this is not the kind of justice that the working class deserves. The working class deserves collective justice, not senseless violence. And that's that. That's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the National Guard deployments in major cities, in major American cities. And this is where imperialism comes home, folks. This began in June with deployments to Los Angeles in response to the immigration raids and protests. But this has been happening for some time now. Trump deployed the National Guard in D.C., saying 2,200 National Guardsmen deployed to Washington, D.C. last month to fight crime. I'm doing air quotes for those who are only listening right now. To fight crime, imminently planning to send troops to Chicago and are threatening to send troops to cities like Baltimore, Boston, and New York. This violates the Posse Comitatus? I can't spell for crap, guys. I can't speak for crap. Anyway, this was an act in 1878 which prohibits the use of federal troops for domestic law enforcement. Disclaimer, this law was passed to prevent the military intervention in the establishment of Jim Crow laws in the South, which is one of the few cases where it may have been justified, but the law was has placed useful limits on the already overburdensome police state of the United States since then. I'm not surprised, honestly, that the President of the United States is currently deploying the National Guard on his citizens, because this is how he rolls. I mean, if we were I'm curious to see what leftists thought that this was not even leftists. I'm curious to see what liberals thought was going to happen, and conservatives alike. That he was going to do this, because this truly is imperialism coming home. You know, this is costing over $1 million a day in each city without counting costs for federal law enforcement agencies. And this could be paving the way for a coup at the end of Trump's term, you know, a self-coup, if you will, basically, so he can maintain his power, because at this point, we really don't know what his plan is, but it can't be anything good, because Donald Trump is a dictator, and he is 100%. This has been happening over decades, but this is certainly happening under his presidency. This is essentially putting all of the power into the executive branch, so that no one can question it. And this is being actively aided and abetted by Democrats and Republicans alike. Because this is what liberalism is. This is how it ends. And we must continue to look at the situation from a principled point of view. We must look at this situation and say, no one should be a dictator. And in fact, the only dictator there should be is the dictatorship of the proletariat, the working class, the people. And it's why we need to be organizing, meeting our neighbors, meeting with unions, actively organizing, politically educating people, and finding ways in which we can build solidarity and build lines of care and empathy and networks, because this is how we win. All is not lost. I know that it can feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders when we see situations like this, where, you know, the National Guard is being deployed to our cities, our homes, where our neighbors and our friends live. But we have to remember that the major wins that the working class has had in decades and centuries before this have happened because of struggle, because the working class has struggled for it. You can look at things like the 8-hour workday. You can look at I just talked about this last week with Comrade Marina, but queer rights and liberation. These things have happened because working people have joined hands in solidarity and fought for each other in the streets. This is not a call to action. This is political and historical fact. If you want to make real change, then you have to be willing to fight for it. It's not just going to happen because you vote hard enough. It's not just going to happen because you shut up to one school board meeting. This needs to be an active thing. This needs to be us putting ourselves on the line for each other, because that is how we make true political change. And I understand how hard this is. I do. We're giving up a lot. But if you're like me and you want a family, and you want to live a good life, and you want a life worth living, then this is what we do. This is how we win. These things don't just happen because we want them to. They happen because we work for them. Not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors, for our friends, for our forests, our environment, our earth. We are doing this, we are organizing because we care. And because we see that active fascism is currently, it's killing us, the working class. Right to work laws, right to work states shouldn't exist. That shouldn't be a thing, but it is. And we need to be actively organizing against that. There is no place for these things. There is no place for these policies. And just as I said, there is no place for vigilante justice. If you are someone who is thinking that vigilante justice is somehow going to get you where you want to be, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you read and you talk to other leftists, and who will tell you that this is not the way. It can feel really cathartic, but it's not ultimately going to get us what we want, what we need to survive. We are not going to get universal health care by killing a healthcare CEO. It happened back in December. Everyone was super happy about it. I get it. I totally do get it. I completely understand those feelings. But has there been any meaningful change made because one person shot a healthcare CEO? Not particularly. People have been gaining more class consciousness, but at the cost of what? A life? Is it worth it? Ask yourself this. Is it worth it? If Trump were shot tomorrow and he died, J.D. Vance would take his place. There's always going to be someone else that's going to take his place. Charlie Kirk is shot today. Tomorrow there's going to be another right-wing talking head pundit that's going to come up and is going to spout the same crap that he was spouting and is going to say the same things that he was saying, and it's all going to continue. And it's all going to be the same. No. This is a systemic issue. The National Guard deployments are a systemic issue. We have to look at this from a wider angle. This isn't just an individual who is doing these things. Trump is enabled to do this over decades of the consolidation of power to the executive branch. Trump is able to do this because the American populace has been primed to allow something like this to happen, because our class consciousness is gone. But it can come back, and it actively is. With parties like the American Party of Labor, other communists who are building class solidarity and empathy, we must persist. We must continue. Do not go gentle into that good night. Do not allow things like this to silence you, to say, oh, well, someone else is going to do it. No, this is an us thing. This isn't just a them thing. This is all of us. We cannot rely on individuals to do what the collective must be doing right now. And this kind of brings me to what's going on in Nepal, which is a youth uprising in response to social media bans and economic inequality. Low employment and low wages for the masses, while the children of government leaders are flaunting their wealth on the internet. 21 protesters have been killed, and protesters set fire to the Capitol and have even begun arming themselves. They said Prime Minister and other prominent government officials have officially resigned, and other uprisings in the region have toppled governments recently, like in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. It's really hard to tell what's going to happen. It's hard to tell what political movement is going to come out of what's going on in Nepal. But we should be looking at this as a step which the American populace, I'm not saying should be taking, but should be taking notes. Take notes, folks. Material conditions for folks in Nepal has gotten abhorrent, which is why this is even happening to begin with. And it's happening not only because of that, but also because of major political repression, which I don't know what else the Nepal government was expecting. This this is how things go. You know, it's terrible for those that have passed away, those who have died as a result of this, I don't know if it would be called a revolution at this point. It really depends on what, like I said, what political movements come out of this, if there already is one. I know there's a lot of youth organizing happening in Nepal right now, which even allowed this to be possible. And once again, Red Youth Rising. This is what needs to be happening. We need to be organizing young people. We need to be young people. If you're watching, if you're listening, get in contact with your local socialist, your local communist, even if not, your local leftist, people who are out there actively organizing and doing the work. We all need to be doing the work. I heard at one point, there was a person I know in school who one time told me, I don't want it to be my problem, so I'm just going to use my white privilege and walk away. And to that, I point to situations like Nepal, where we look at what's happening and we look at the material conditions. And all I have to say to folks who are thinking like that is, at what point did you think you were untouchable? If we really want to look at this from a purely selfish perspective, I have to ask, at what point did you think that you were going to escape the political repression? At what point did you think that this wasn't going to apply to you? Fascists will eat themselves. That's how fascism works. It's reactionary. There is no real thought process that goes into being a fascist, rather a knee-jerk reaction. There are processes to do mass extermination. There are processes to do mass displacement under fascism, but the actual ideology itself is very knee-jerk and reactionary. I ask folks who are feeling this way, thinking that it's not your problem, black, white, or otherwise, male, female, or otherwise, anyone really. If you really think this isn't your problem, I don't know how else I can convince you other than we will all at one point be victims of fascism. If it's in political violence. Political violence isn't just taking someone's life with a gun, like what happened to Charlie Kirk today. Political violence is also keeping people from healthcare access. Political violence is using ICE as a means to deport people. Political violence comes in a lot of shapes and sizes, and I ask folks who think that they will not be affected by these things, or who want to look away, or who want to say it's not my problem, I ask you to truly look at your conditions, what you're dealing with. For example, rising grocery prices, an unaffordable housing market. I ask you, are you sure about that? Because if you are, you must be a millionaire. And if not, then you're just downright playing yourself. If you think that you can get by and not have to deal with the problems of which the bourgeois class is very fine with putting on us, the working class, if you think that you're essentially saying, I'm not a working class person, they are. So I don't have to deal with this. And that is just complete ignorance. You need to wake up. We all need to wake up. This isn't stopping anytime soon. The fascism train is going at full speed ahead, and it's not stopping for anyone. You're not allowed to just get off at the next stop because you're uncomfortable. That's not how fascism works. It's here. And currently, with the way things are going, it's here to stay, unless we do something about it. And if folks are going to continue to look away from the situation and say, it's not my problem, tell that to the people in Gaza. It's clearly their problem. They're being murdered outright. Just murder. Murder for murder's sake. Genocide for genocide's sake. The only reason that we are not in those conditions right now, if I really have to take it there, is because we got lucky and we weren't born there. When I look at, for example, Hind Rajab, who was a child who was shot 355 times in the car she was sitting in around all of her dead family members while she waited 3 hours for an ambulance to show up, of which the Israeli occupying forces then murdered as well. I say to that, not only is it a tragedy and so sad and horrifying, but I say the only difference between that young girl and my little sister is geography. That's it. That is it. And if folks don't think that this could not happen to us, we got another thing coming, folks. This is the time. Now is the time to be organizing. Now. Not later, not when you're comfortable. Now. We're never going to be comfortable under capitalism. We are always going to be clawing and fighting for better. We're always going to be trying to figure out where our next meal is coming from, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And we need to stop acting as though this is as good as it gets. Stop being Fukuyama pilled. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, look him up. He's really stupid. But I say all of this to say that I want people to understand that this is not the time to look away and say, it's not my problem. Just because your material conditions are fine right now doesn't mean they're going to stay that way. That doesn't mean jack. I experienced this myself, getting a little bit personal here. I got kicked off of my parents' health insurance back in April. I'm 21, by the way, and I was without health care for all of the summer, and I had to wait until I could get on the school's health care plan. And I have to say that is a pretty scary thing. That's pretty terrifying, because if something had happened to me over those 4 months that I wasn't insured, I would have been screwed. There would have been no outlets for me because I didn't have health care. And a lot of Americans, I think, can really relate to that. A lot of us are going uninsured. I don't have the luxury of waiting and taking my time to find a job when I get out of college. No, I need to find whatever I can get that'll give me benefits, because that's the position I'm in right now. And that's the position that a lot of people are in right now. So I urge you, please, when we look at what's going on in Nepal, when we look at what's going on across the world in France, citizen uprisings against the police fascist states that are currently run by bourgeois interests that only care about capital, only care about profit. That is what they are here to do. I urge you to please look at reality. Look at reality and organize. Find your local organizing structure, whether that be a communist that's organizing, or communist group, whether that be a Food Not Bombs group, whether that be even PSL and DSA to an extent. I'm not gonna dog on DSA, but I will say with their vote on Zionism back in over this, I want to say a few weeks ago now, we need to be careful with nationalism and leftist political parties, but even DSA. Find your local chapters, your local folks who are organizing. Find your local mutual aid groups. I did a whole film on mutual aid. And organize. Get out there and get loud. Organize. Find people who are doing networks of care right now. This is important now more than ever. We need to be organizing. And I know I say this a lot, and I know I sound like a broken record, but guys, there are so many people out here who are trying to justify what's going on by saying, oh, well, it's not my problem. It is. And I will continue to say this until I am blue in the face. Find your people. Find your people and organize. I don't care if you're a liberal. I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you voted for Trump all 3 times and you'd vote for him a 4th time. If your material conditions suck, which there's a very good chance they do, you need to be organizing, because they're not going to get any better unless we do. This is how we win, and this is how we fight. Anyway, it is getting to be 7:30, and so I'm about to play you the first half of my recording with Grayson and Trevor from Fossil Free Illinois and Students for Environmental Concerns. I'm super excited to play this for you guys because these folks are so knowledgeable. They have so much experience in student organizing, and they explain a lot of principles, which I think are super important when we talk about divestment, and we talk about getting the university and other universities like ours to divest from fossil fuels and ultimately divest from imperialism. So, folks, this is my friends from Fossil Free Illinois and Students for Environmental Concerns, Trevor and Grayson.
My name is Grayson Hodson. I'm the action coordinator for SECS, and I'm also an organizer with Fossil Free Illinois. I should say SECS is Students for Environmental Concerns, an environmental RSO on campus.
Lovely. Awesome.
All right, and then hi, my name is Trevor. I am also an organizer with Fossil Free Illinois and SECS, also Fossil Free Illinois and Students for Environmental Concerns.
Awesome. Yeah. And so I think that the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Fossil Free Illinois is like divestment and all of, these big words and everything. Can you guys kind of explain like what like the line here is? Like, I guess you guys are on a party, but it usually be like the party line, what's kind of the organizational line and everything that you guys usually push in these kinds of interviews?
Yeah, I would say that for us as an organization, divestment is kind of the North Star for what we want as a movement. Um, Essentially, like what that means is that as a university, we have $170 million invested in fossil fuels, and we want those over the span of several years. We don't expect it to happen overnight to be divested, basically moved, financial investments moved from fossil fuels to more sustainable options. So whenever we're doing these interviews or organizing or speaking at protests, that's kind of the bottom line. That's what we want from the university. That's our demand. However, I think that we also are willing to take smaller, more tangible steps towards divestment rather than this kind of immediate, refinancialization of their investments, such as like advisory committees or things like that. So I think there are many avenues for divestment, but that is the North Star, is just simply reinvesting our funds into more sustainable options.
Yeah, that's lovely. I think that that's like a very tangible goal, honestly, because divestment has already been part of has already been talked about for so long at this point, and there's so many other options that I feel like divestment, like, why wouldn't we be doing that? Why do you think the university doesn't want to divest from fossil fuels?
Well, luckily, we don't actually need to guess why. So, for many of our meetings with the University of Illinois administrators, one of their like first lines, what do they love to say whenever we're like, we have the goal of divestment. We give them popular demands of students. We show them past referendums from students that have 70% of students voting yes for divestment. We have past promises from them that we show them where we say you promised to divest, and they say basically, well, we don't actually want to divest because we think that as as a university, we have the ability with our investments to make these companies change through shareholder engagement. Of course, this is a fallacy. We know this isn't true. Trying to frame fossil fuel companies as being willing to change away from fossil fuels is just pretty ridiculous. And I think that like what this really comes down to is them basically lying to us. And the real reason being, at least from our research and what would make sense to us, is we get a lot of research money from these companies like Shell and BP. They funnel a lot of money into our university for research into sustainable research, yes, but a lot of it is simply just greenwashing their companies, making it seem like they're investing in things and funding things that are good for the environment. And our university really likes that money. This is a kind of a secondary goal that we get to eventually, which is dissociation. Part of the 3Ds of the environmental movement: divestment, dissociation, decarbonization. And I think this is one of the fundamental reasons why our university won't divest from fossil fuels, is because we are very used to having this money come in. We like it a lot. Our faculty likes it a lot, and we don't really have alternative options right now. So it's that kind of confliction between researchers and in the funds that we get that I think is one of the main reasons. Of course, they will say that it's shareholder engagement, but it's a fallacy. It doesn't exist. It's not really possible, especially with fossil companies and with this specific topic.
Yeah, most certainly. I think that when it comes to, I mean, the fact of the matter is that the university, we've had these student organizations around environmental concerns for how long now? You know, like
Years.
Years. And the fact is that back in the 1950s, these companies knew that climate change was going to become a problem. They knew that, by pumping carbon into the atmosphere and continuing to do production the way that they were, it was going to speed up a lot of processes which didn't have to be. This was very much a conscious choice. And I think that when it comes to the university continuing to take their funding, it shows that, and also I think arresting students or being part of like the criminalization of students just protesting around these subjects. I know last year was actually my first year at the U of I, and one thing I saw at the climate march that apparently your organizations do every year. Usually they're permitted, they're fine, but last year multiple students were criminalized for that. Even though the university knows that this is something that these organizations do is totally peaceful. There's never any issues. And it's just extremely telling, I think. What would you say about those events? Because I'm very curious. I've not heard from students who are actually part of the organizations about it.
Right. And then that's a great question. Well, I want to get back to your point about the fossil fuel companies and kind of the inherent knowledge that this will cause climate change. I'll get to that later, but addressing first the crackdown from a university on students. This initial crackdown. So I was not involved with the organizing for fall 2024, and that climate march had a response, and this was organized by SECS. That climate march had a response from the university that involved giving academic strikes to 3 students, 2 of our action coordinators, and then our president, and then as well as a strike on our RSO. And there was just this long litigation having to go through this process of basically being litigated on whether or not we should have any more, whether we should be an RSO, whether there should be more punitive responses. And it was pretty arduous. And the whole point of it is really just to make us afraid to do these things in the future. And then if Trevor wants to actually talk on the expressive action policies, I believe that this was really the result of the encampment that we saw, which of course later came to affect the climate march.
Yeah. Building on all of that, I think it's important. I think it's really important when we talk about this to center the fact that the expressive action policies and the charges that happened to our organizers, they did not happen in a vacuum. They came at the same time as multiple students getting both legal and disciplinary charges for the SJP encampments that happened the prior months. It came from one of those students being expelled from the university entirely, which I don't think people talk about anywhere near enough. And those changes, and because of all of those things that happened, the university was coming from a place of embarrassment and coming from a place of their students making them look bad. And that is why all of these crackdowns are happening to other organizers right now. That's why this university was not afraid to even give, admittedly, a slap on the wrist, but still a shot at their student body president, because they want to make it clear, they have an image to uphold to these fossil fuel companies, to these weapons manufacturers companies, to all these companies that are only debatably making them a profit in the first place for the sole purpose of getting rid of all crackdown on campus. And for as much as we would like to say that this hasn't had a culture shift on campus, it has. I think this is your first year at U of I, Felicity. I feel like, and Grayson, you can weigh in, I feel like there has been less protest since the encampment out of that fear. With that being said, there are a lot of steps that we are taking to build up to that. For one, we are having another climate march on, Grayson, is it the 19th?
Yes, the 19th from 12 to 1.
Yes, because again, we are not prepared to stop fighting for this. We are not prepared to stop getting in their faces about all of this stuff. We've also done a lot of the above board things that they would want us to do to push for divestment, because if they're going to charge us for everything, if they're going to say, oh, you can't point a megaphone at a building during class hours,
That's
which, by the
crazy.
way, is like, which it's some really insane stuff. We're like, okay, but you're not going to listen if we actually pass the referendum through the student council and student government that you want us to do. And you're also going to crack down on us for pointing a megaphone at a building or not like reserving the quad to have a protest on, something that you would never permit because of
Constitutional
Yeah.
rights.
Yeah.
Right. Like the university would rather impede on our constitutional rights to protest than even have a conversation about fossil fuel divestment, let alone weapons manufacturers. So,
Right.
yeah, it's very clear that everything the university is doing, it is because they do not want to hear from us because it is making them look bad and it is making them feel embarrassed on the national stage in some capacity.
Yeah, no, it's pretty obvious that there's like a huge right-wing push currently happening right now, especially on the campus of the U of I, that the University of Illinois administration is just kind of letting happen and in fact actively participating in. They like to talk a lot about DEI and being, super inclusive and everything. Sorry, stop. My cats are like, stop it. Anyway, they really love to talk about how they're super inclusive. I know there was like a post that they made like last year that I kind of like laughed at because I was like, what the okay. They're like, we're the most disability friendly campus. We're so like, we're such a great campus to be on. And it's like, okay, but not really, because you let Charlie Kirk speak in Follinger Hall and you didn't let Grayson go in and talk to him. So
That is a very funny story, yeah.
can you please recount it?
Yes, of course. So I did not mention this at the beginning, I'm also a columnist for the Daily Illini. And of course, I write all about these like leftist issues on campus. And Charlie Kirk, being the goblin that he is, decided to make a list of people that could not be entered or not be allowed to enter into his speaking engagement. I was on that list, tried to get in, could not get in. So there's a lot of people on that list, several DI reporters and organizers on campus. I believe Trevor's on the list, but
Trevor was on the
was
list?
not. Yes, I believe he was as well. Many organizers were. So yeah,
Wow.
they're very clearly afraid of us. And also, I just want to mention, I think it's very funny how in the expressive action policies they say there can be no event or no action that deprives people of the enjoyment of campus. And I would say there's nothing more that would deprive me of the joy of campus than seeing a bunch of red-hatted fascists lined up down the quad. And I just think it's very ironic that the university is willing to give these people a space, but not the space to people that are willing or that want to just make the campus a better place. It's very funny to me.
Yeah. That is like, I couldn't believe it, honestly. It being my first year and seeing that like from like the Turning Point USA, University of Illinois, like little thing that they had going on. I was like, what are we doing? This is crazy. Like I couldn't even believe it because I actually did a little bit of research and it turns out one of the members of the Black Panthers tried to come and speak at the university. No. Sorry. He tried to come and speak at the university back in the 60s and they wouldn't let him. So they do actually have the power to allow or not allow people to speak in places like Follinger Hall. And they let Charlie Kirk, knowing that he is not only a white supremacist, but also believes in the Great Replacement theory, which is fucking insane, frankly. And that he is also being funded, by the Republican Party, who are funded by fossil fuel companies, who are given money to win elections. And I just think that it kind of comes full circle in a lot of ways because, we are comrades fighting to have them divest from fossil fuels. No. And, we are all fighting to, have them divest from fossil fuels. And they are actively allowing political groups, even though they say they're a very inclusive campus and we love everyone, they're allowing hate groups basically, to come and speak, who are funded by these same companies, who get shady money from people who are associated with these companies. These billionaires, they love to mingle with each other. And so I guess my next big question for you guys is, I guess, what action do we take against the university at this point? Because they clearly don't want to listen. What as students can we do to keep putting pressure on them?
Yeah, this is an increasingly complicated question as we get into more and more as frankly, more and more oppression comes not just from our university, but from the state as a whole. So, for one, I think the things that we are doing on the ground right now, I guess I can plug some things that we're doing right now. Obviously, the climate march is happening. We did our student referendum. We plan on continuing canvassing activities just to keep raising awareness for divestment, because I think, interestingly, while in leftist spaces, everyone knows about divestment, and I think awareness is at an all-time high there. It is definitely not high enough on campus as a whole.
Definitely
So
not.
I think that's something that's a huge issue for us, is that, frankly, we need more people to care about this and get to critical mass of having way more people caring, which I think is going to be easier to do because I think people, once they hear about the $170 million that we have in these companies, and once you hear that it is actually profitable to divest in some instances, tends to turn most people that I know, right? With that being said, there has to be other forms of direct action, constantly embarrassing the university and constantly letting, at least in my perspective, I think the university really cares about their media images. They really don't want to look bad, and they really want their donors to not see any blemishes on their record. So I think at the end of the day, it's about making their record look uglier and uglier and uglier until they do the one thing that will ultimately clean up everything they're doing, which is actually pulling money out of the companies doing the most damage to our environment and our world.
Yeah, and adding to that, I think that on the smaller, more individual level, I think that people could just talk about it more to each other. I think that divestment can seem like this kind of big, scary, maybe hard to understand issue. But at the end of the day, we really just care about the climate and the environment. And in this particular case, getting billionaires and oligarchs out of our decision making as a university. You know what I mean? I think that that's something that anybody can get behind, wanting independence as an institution from these companies that would push us in any particular direction. And as you were saying earlier, Felicity, these companies, there is no other way for them to exist than to pollute the world. I mean, that's just how they function. That is their goal as a company. They are responsible for their shareholders, and they need to make profits, and this is how they make profits, by making the world more reliant on fossil fuels, something that we know is polluting the world and something that we know can be replaced by more renewable options. I mean, I think the fact that the university doesn't have solar panels on the roof of every building is evidence enough that they are willing to not look like they're trying to make more renewable steps simply because they don't want to push away these investments or these funding opportunities from these companies.
Yeah, most certainly. I think it's a great example of larger United States imperialism, which is the fact is that these research universities are a great opportunity, as we've talked about before, for companies to invest millions of dollars in research that can be done around these fossil fuels, so that they can continue to be global exporters and importers of fossil fuels, and continue to mine them in countries which we continue to exploit for labor and natural resources. We can see that we've destabilized many a country in the Middle East and South America for their resources. Iran being a big one, a huge oil exporter, who initially had, back in the 70s, I believe, had elected a mildly socialist leader. Not even that. He wasn't even that all that, and he just said he wanted to nationalize Iranian oil, so that colonial powers couldn't control their natural resource anymore. And within how many years he was gone. Democratically elected socialist leader dismantled by the CIA. My cats are fighting.
Many such cases. And that's, I think, stories like that are also why it is so important to, at a minimum, push for divestment, so we can, at a minimum, begin to correct the decades of damage that have been done, right? Because I think at the end of the day, the exploitation of our climate, the exploitation of the third world, the exploitation of everyone, these are all interconnected issues. We are all being oppressed in some form or another by these larger institutions, these larger governments, these larger companies. And whether it's as dramatic for you specifically as being an Iranian in the 70s and having your democratically elected government overthrown over some mild socialism, or just having to deal with the fallout of the climate crisis in itself, that's a fight that we all need to continue to be having at all times. That falls into all of the movements that we're working with too. There's a reason that we show up for the labor movements on campus wherever we can. We're really proud of how we're able to show up for GEO. We're proud of how we show up for SJP, because we know that that is an environmental issue too. Think about the obvious effects of bombing the entire Gaza Strip on the environment. Clearly pretty bad, on top of the fact that, again, you're killing millions of people at a certain point, or negatively affecting the lives of millions of people. This is why we're in this movement, to get everyone out of the chains that are holding them back right now, to get everyone to a point where they can live in a better world. That involves getting ourselves to a much cleaner and safer climate too. That's not going to burn us all to death in a few years.
And also something that I think is, like, you mentioned, these kind of imperialist ideology, right, of America. And I think it does even extend into our university. I mean, one of our board of trustee members literally owned a coal mine in Nigeria. And yeah, I know it. And had a restraining order from the Nigerian government in 2023 for this coal mine. And alleging them of environmental degradation. And I think that, like, the fact that we as a university are willing to allow these people to make decisions for us, and then also allow them to not be held responsible, or even to like put them on blast. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is very clearly an issue, and we just cannot allow these imperialist ideologies to just be propagated throughout our administration. It's horrendous.
Yeah, no, I cannot. Coal mine?
A coal mine. Specifically, it's board of trustee member Wilbur Millhouse. This guy.
Call him out. Call him out. I'll try to drop a photo when I edit. I'll do my best, because what the fuck? Like, why is this allowed? Like, this shouldn't be allowed. The fact is that like, something that continues to draw me more and more, I guess, make me more and more disillusioned by the university, especially when I came here and I realized more about four-year universities, because I started at community college. We don't got all that going on. We're tiny. And something I noticed is I wondered, why are buildings like the Siebel Center named the Siebel Center? So I looked it up, and it's because he's a billionaire. He's a rich guy who gives a lot of money to the university because he went here. And he's also a giant right-wing Republican Trump supporter. And we have a building named after him. So once again, this like image of inclusivity and of progressivism that the university likes to push is being shattered Because what do you mean you have one of your buildings, multiple of your buildings at this point, named after people who are actively adding to these huge, enormous problems? You know, and a guy on your board that literally owned a coal mine. What? Like that's, and like there, it's not, he's not unbiased. You know, there's no checks and balances there. This is not a democracy. You know, and that not only goes for the university, but that goes at large. You know, we do not live in a democracy. I keep having to, I think, push this with people, you know, even my own family, who, you know, think that if you just vote hard enough, I promise, things will get better. You know, I'm still with her. Hillary 2016, people.
No, it is so funny. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, really. It's just, we're willing to accept all this money and really just not even acknowledge it. And I think it does come down to just like, especially in this moment, yes, under Trump, under fascism, under what is, I don't really consider a democracy at this point either. It is hard for an institution like this to be independent and also like just listen to its students, because I think about like, you know, pre-Trump, you know, during the Biden era, the university was allowing these climate marches to happen because they're like, all right, well, the president obviously does not care. The president may be in favor of these things. And so literally whenever a new administration comes in, or whenever someone new in power comes in, they're just going to immediately bend the knee and do whatever they say out of fear. And it just, our university does not understand its own power and does not understand its responsibility to its students to stand up for them. And I mean, this goes for like, you know, immigrants on campus too, our international students who live in fear of ICE and things like this. Like, our university needs to be protecting students, you know, beyond what it thinks it's capable of. It needs to do more, just in general, especially under this current regime.
Yeah, if we're a university that's going to pride ourselves on being like the world leaders in all of these things, we have to act like it. And that means there's no excuse to be taking all of this money from companies that don't align with that value, or to have someone who is a literal coal mine owner on our board. Those are just things that if we are going to be the people who are actually leading the charge and shaping how the world operates, we need to be taking those steps. And frankly, that's why people look at Michigan as the leader over us, because they have divested. We have not. That's why we're viewed as behind. And our university can keep saying that they want to knock on Michigan's door and take that crown, but they're not willing to be the leaders of their university. They're not willing to be leaders like that. And that's illustrated by the fact that they won't listen to their students in places like Michigan have done that. And that's something I always want to harp on, because I think it's important to note that it's not completely unrealistic to divest even. It's not unrealistic to do this fight and keep making money, but they want a very specific kind of blood and oil money. And that is what is gross to me. It's like, it's not even profitable to be taking this money at this point, if they keep taking it, because it's how they've been making their money for so long, and it's the ties that they want. And it makes them look better on whatever stats they're using to look better. In reality, real leadership is not coming away with all of the metrics. It's making the changes that cause other people to change and reshaping the metrics that we look at in the first place. Something that our university has not done, as demonstrated by the fact that they're not okay with any kind of protest or any kind of discussion or any kind of divestment. I think it's really notable to note also that the first crackdowns on SCCS were during the Biden administration. That's something that I think we lose sight of a lot, because it was in like September, even like in our internal conversations about it. These crackdowns have been, this is not just a Trump issue. The university has been willing to crack down on us during the Biden administration. And I guarantee if Harris had won, it would not have changed how our university handles student protests, because again, it has, to an extent, it does have to do with the administration. And that is a lot of those cuts we're seeing in DEI especially. But that's because DEI is very favorable to the image that Biden would want, or that Harris would want. Trump doesn't want that image, so that's why the DEI cuts happen. Trump and Biden agree in the fact that any kind of protest is bad, because we should all fall in line and pledge our allegiance to the flag every morning. So because of that, exactly. So because of that, both presidents have been a part of cracking down on protests across the country.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I would like to say, when I say Biden was, yes, Biden has a lot of issues, and I do not mean to say that he loves protesters, because
Oh
that's
yeah.
obviously not
No.
the case. And I think that like Trevor makes a good point here, and I think that what it comes down to is like divestment from fossil fuels will logically lead to divestment from Israel, and that is their big fear, and that's why they're willing to crack down on
There is.
something like climate, which is something that Biden may be more pro climate than Trump, but Trump and Biden both love Israel.
They
That's
love
what they have in
Israel.
common, and they're willing to stop climate divestment just to stop Israeli divestment.
Yeah, no, when I think about student repression, one of the biggest things I think about obviously is not recognizing SJP anymore as a student organization, and also the giant crackdowns they did on the encampments and everything, which, as we know, as you said, happened under Biden. Like that. I think that I'm actually doing an episode on Kamala Harris in a few weeks with a comrade of mine. We're going to be ripping into her a little bit. And don't worry, Hillary Clinton will be getting her fair share in a few weeks as well, her and her husband. But I think that when I was at Quad Day, actually, on Sunday, a few weeks ago now, there was the Democrats had their little booth. They were doing their little thing over on Quad Day, and I couldn't help but clown on them a little bit, because I was like, you stand for nothing. You stand for absolutely nothing, because a lot of the student repression, as we have talked about, has happened under Democratic presidents. And I walked up to their booth and I was like, okay, I'm a little curious. Well, what do they have going on here? What could they, they went running with their tail between their legs after they lost the election in November. I'm curious what they could possibly have out here on the quad today. And they had these little buttons that said, we choose freedom, with a picture of Kamala Harris on it in 2024. I started laughing at them. No, they didn't give me a button. I gave them a little sticker and was like, I'm organizing this. You should come. Because I was like, this is the dumbest shit I ever seen. I couldn't help but laugh at them. Go ahead, yeah.
I will say, while we're talking about Quad Day, did you notice where SECS was?
I did not.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just curious, because you made it all the way to Dems, so you were pretty close to us, but they had us all the way in the corner by Greg Hall. If you were at the Dems booth walking away from the quad, you would have had to make another right.
Damn.
Which, I mean, there's no map right now, but for those of you who don't know exactly what I'm talking about, on Quad Day, it's if you're not seeking out us, you didn't find us. Which I think is a really interesting thing, where it's they even give, granted, I don't think the Dems were in an objectively good spot either, but it was notable that they were just we don't want people finding this group.
Yeah.
So that was just something I've clocked.
Yeah, and to your point, Felicity,
Yeah.
I mean, who is the constituency that Democrats speak to right now? It's literally billionaires. That is it. 1% of people, and half the billionaires love Republicans more anyway. So what are they even doing? And I look at New York with Zoran Mondani, who's a DSA candidate, but is going through Democratic party to win an election. It's this is not a democracy where we have to basically go through this two-party system just to have socialist voices, which are popular voices over, Democrats talking about, just most irrelevant things, or maybe not even talking about anything at all because they're too scared. And yeah, I think that the Dems on campus, have issues, but they will actually be, Illini Dems will be speaking at the protest. And I think that's something to point out about a lot of Dems is there's either the Dems that stick with this I don't know what you call it, this old guard, which is who does that? Nobody. But also you have this new Dems who's trying to kind of have the DSA take over the Democratic Party. And I think that a lot of Democrats on campus that are involved want to see that happen. And I think that like one of the unfortunate parts of organizing and being part of the Democratic Party, and you have to just pick with who you think is going to win. And I think that is just so, it's so unfortunate. And it just really points to like the failures of this country as a democracy. Like
the fact that the leading
Oh, go ahead.
the fact that the leading opposition voices right now on the national scale are Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer.
My
Please,
God,
please,
it's so embarrassing.
Spare me.
Like who have no backbone, who can't do anything, who are actively trying to sabotage, I think, what feels like the only popular Democratic campaign right now that I've seen in a while was the Zoran campaign. And the fact that Jeffries is like, I don't know.
Maybe he's a terrorist.
Right.
Maybe he did 9/11. I don't know. Like that's
Just be racist.
No, that's been the Democratic talking point. I thought when I saw them, being racist about Zoran Mamdani, I was like, am I on Fox News right now? What's happening? What the fuck? Like, I was genuinely baffled by how racist the Democrats have been about Zoran Mamdani. And I wrote a piece in the Red Phoenix, my party's newspaper, in which, I talked about Zoran Mamdani. And there's a lot of Trotskyites who are a little skeptical of him. Grayson, I saw that.
I understand the Trotsky hate. My brother is like a full-blown communist, and he talks to me about all the Trotsky hate. I don't read too much literature, so I'm not too informed, but
give me my moment here. I do not fuck with Trotsky. I'll be real, everyone. I'm not out here reading Trotsky. I'm not out here like, okay, I met some Trots at Quad Day. They were cool. They were not bad people. I liked them. I hope the guy texts me back. I forgot his name, but if you're watching, please text me. The Trots, in practice, I do not mind organizing with the Trots. However, I do not appreciate their opinions on Zoran Mamdani, not because I'm out here repping the DSA. No. I'm not out here with the DSA Maoists trying to, push communism in the Democratic Socialist Party. 44% of them believe in Zionism. I'm sorry. Fuck you. Like, if you're a Zionist and you're part of the DSA, you're not a socialist.
Get out.
That's a shocking statistic. That's crazy.
At the DSA convention in Chicago, they voted, and 44% did not want to. What was it? I don't follow the DSA.
Was it expel the Zionists?
It wasn't expel them, but it was basically say like, we don't fuck with Zionism like that. And 44% of them were like, no, I fuck with Zionism like that. And I think that's a problem. Yeah.
And I mean, if someone's got to be the DSA sympathizer on this pod, I will, but that's insane. That is not excusable.
No, it's not, because that's nationalism. And if you're going to fuck with nationalism, I'm sorry, but you never were a commie. You never were a tanky. You were out here cosplaying. I don't know where you were. If you were on the subreddit, I'm sorry, but that's not the same as being a communist. So I'm just a little annoyed at the Trots, especially because their opinions on Mamdani are super reactionary. They think that he's basically like AOC, which I understand. I have to say I get it, especially after her actions in the House where Marjorie Taylor Greene, for some reason, was like, we need to divest weapons from Israel or something. Most of the squad voted on it and were like, yeah, we fuck with that. AOC did not. She tried to walk it back. I did cover this a few weeks ago when it happened. And people were right to criticize her because Summer Lee voted yes. Ilhan Omar, one of the most progressive people in the House, voted with Marjorie Taylor Greene on that. Do I like Marjorie Taylor Greene? No, she's a ghoul. But I think.
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
Well, this speaks to like what we're letting happen, and I don't want to speak for like the anti-Zionist movement, but I think that like what we're letting happen is we're letting actually anti-Semitic people lead the anti-Zionist movement, and that's what Marjorie
Period.
Taylor Greene is doing. Is like she's actually anti-Semitic. She dislikes Jews for anti-Semitic reasons. She thinks Jews and Israel are the same thing, and
Yep.
with that, she's leading that movement, and that is a failure of AOC as being the top progressive, the most famous progressive in the House right now. It's really an embarrassment.
Yeah, it's a complete embarrassment. And and when it comes to like the climate crisis and anything and everything, it kind of speaks to the fact that what do you stand for? It's like if you're not willing to stand for anything, you're willing to fall for anything. Like what it when I see booths like the Democrats on campus and people flocking to it and thinking like this is where I can express myself and I can find real change and we can do something different. It's disheartening because it's like, I'm sorry, but like we wouldn't be at brunch right now if Kamala was in office. We'd still be in the same similar position at least. I'm sorry, but Pete, the signs were there. The actual signs, people were making those signs being like, we'd be at brunch. I'm like, no, girl, we'd still be having to organize because, baby, she sucks. Like,
She'd still be sending money to Israel.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that like most people, like if you want to actually make tangible change on campus, you don't like I appreciate organizing with the Democrats on campus. I think that they have their uses, but I think that if you want to actually make change, you go to these grassroots organizations. Like Trevor can speak more to this as well, but most of these left-wing organizations on campus are doing things. Like we were pushing a bill in the House. It's we're going to try to reintroduce it this coming session, but it would force the university to divest from fossil fuels. We are on the ground canvassing. We're pushing referendums. We're speaking to the board of trustee meetings. Like we're trying to do on the ground things. We're not just supporting the next person that has Democrat, stamped on their forehead, basically. You know what I mean? We're trying to make change. We're trying to direct the political movement on campus instead of just following it. And I think that is one of the main problems with the Democratic Party is that they really don't stand for anything. They have no policy agenda. It is just like whatever the polls say, and it's just cowardly, and they really stand on nothing.
Gruesome Newsom. Sorry, I had to call him out. But
So true.
go ahead, Trevor.
But yeah, no, I could do another entire podcast on the Democratic Party consulting class. So I won't do that right now, but I could do it. But I think that's a big issue in the Democratic Party. What I will say, in incredibly rare defense of campus Dems, I think spaces like that are simultaneously affiliated with the Democratic Party and in the same social circles as a lot of the like actual lefties on campus, I think it is important in a student space on a campus to have these like palatable onboarding ramps into organizing. For example, the first org I was really involved in was Amnesty International, and I think for as many problems as greater Amnesty, that's where we met. Woo! Yeah, for as many problems as like bigger Amnesty International has, for one, I do think they are doing really good work, and I think
Absolutely.
I think the way they handled the dubbing of the Palestine genocide, I understand why it was controversial, but I think it is important. I could talk about that paper for like hours as well. I'm not as mad as other people are. There were good reasons for why they took so long, whatever. But I think having that space to go into where there's a lot of radical people in that org, as you guys know if you've been to their meetings, like
I have.
at least on campus, there are people who are who have more radical thought, who are plugged into these other spaces. And I think being able to meet those people in a space that was not like the party, it made it a lot easier for me as someone who was still gaining my legs politically and like learning what I think, to get into organizing in a space like that was still ultimately above board. And then that made it easier for me to find other groups that are willing to do more direct actions or push the ground game more, or even just do more community work and do more mutual aid. I think So I think on a campus environment, it is important to work with the groups like them, and the groups like Amnesty, because they are good at bringing people in. And oftentimes, I think the student wings are more left than the actual party or the actual NGO.
organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something, I think that is something that is really important to consider. With that being said, I don't want to come to the defense of national Dems. I just think when we're talking about student organizing, I think these on-ramps are really important. And I wish that's something that we put a lot more energy into building up, because I think there's a lot of orgs that need to be doing more given how pressing so many things are. Like, we're dealing with an active genocide in Gaza. We need to be doing more. We're dealing with this much climate exploitation. We need to be doing more. ICE is in our communities. We need to be doing more. And there are rapid response groups that are doing that. But as someone who's a part of some of these groups, the student participation nowhere near as high as we would want it to be. And for a college town like ours, more students need to be involved with those things. I think having groups like Dems, like Amnesty, that are actually plugging people into that, it's making it a lot easier to grow the left movement. It makes it a lot easier for a group like SECS to go up to these meetings of people who are passively interested in these causes and educate more directly and be like, hey, here's the people who are passively interested in the lefty environmental stuff. Let's give you a teaching on divestment. So yeah, I do think these groups, they really do serve a purpose. And I think they are doing a lot of work to shape how campus organizing is going to look. And they certainly make it easier for the radical groups on campus, the SJPs of the world, to do their jobs more effectively and to push the narrative more effectively.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just started yapping on that. I had that rant ready to go.
No. You're totally good. Yeah. I mean, as a Marxist-Leninist myself, someone who's an anti-imperialist and an anti-revisionist for the Maoists who are, trying to figure me out for a second. I think that, those on-ramps are super important to getting to where myself and other folks like myself are at, where we're fully radicalized and ready to mobilize. When it comes to, you don't have to be a full-on commie to understand that we need a class struggle. We need a class revolution, point blank. I've been coming out and saying this in my last few shows because I'm like, you know what? This is where we're at. We have an active fascist regime. And the fact of the matter is that these on-ramp organizations are extremely important to get people to the point of like, okay, class consciousness. This is where we're at. Like the understanding what class actually is, understanding, how the means of production work. What is even the philosophical basis for all of these things? My work with the American Party of Labor, we are an active Marxist-Leninist group. I'm actually in the Marxist 101 class with them right now because I'm a candidate. So I've been learning all about dialectical materialism, not as if I hadn't read it already, but, the understanding that when we look at what I talked about at the beginning of the show, these climate companies knew back in the 1950s that this was going to be a problem. We can see through historical context and through current context that these companies have known. They're not stupid. They have gained billions of dollars off of this industry, and they do not plan on stopping. I've been covering data centers that have been built around the country, one of which was illegally built by Elon Musk in Memphis by a historically Black neighborhood and polluting them. Just straight up doing pollution, environmental racism, like it's cool, like we're fine with this. And there has been active organizing to get them out of there. Because these companies, if there's absolutely nothing done about if there's no regulations, if there's no pushback against them, they will just do what they want. They have,
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Like climate organizing, and this that actually really helped me like think about class struggle. Like it is directly related. When you like talking about onboarding and on ramps to this thing, climate change and the environment and protecting our climate is like related to literally everything. And its basis is that there are people that are getting the negative externalities that these companies are producing by extracting their wealth from the earth, basically, and burning it and shit. And it's what we have and what we need to do is we need to rethink how we approach thinking about climate change and how we approach thinking about our relationship with these companies. When we wake up in the morning, we are in our environment. Housing is an environment. You know what I mean? Like housing, labor, all these things are related to the climate. And like, I think that like SECS in particular, like you go in there and you start to understand how all these things are related. And then you have these more radical wings like FFI that you can eventually ramp up to. And I think that like, yeah, of course, it's all related. And understanding that is really important to climate organizing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's a great note to end on. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about when it comes to this? If where can people find you if you want to be found? Where can people organize with you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll plug
Yeah, you go first. You go first.
Oh, okay. So yeah, SECS, Students for Environmental Concerns. We meet Wednesdays, 6:30 to 7:30 at the Channing Murray Foundation. Please come out. We do all kinds of stuff. We have several different working groups. No matter what you're involved in, what your passions are, if you just want to garden, if you want to plant, if you want to be crazy and radical, you can come with me. Or if you want to kind of work from inside of the wing of the institutions, you can go to policy and work on bills and policy within the administration. And there's also Fossil Free Illinois, which I'll let Trevor speak on.
Yeah, so Fossil Free Illinois, we meet from 2 to 3 p.m. on Fridays in the Channing Murray Foundation as well. For those of you who are in the Champaign-Urbana area, we are open to everyone. We are not an official student group, so that gives us a lot of freedoms for what we can do. I think it's a much more chill time than SECS for sure, just by nature of like there are less of us. But I think that's the space where we can get into more nitty-gritty, action-y, activist-y, protest-y planning things. And it's also just a good place for us to talk about how we can keep pushing this movement forward and have those more intimate conversations. One other thing I would like to plug while we're at it is, so as I was talking about earlier, we need a lot more awareness of of what's going on and what divestment even is. One of the ways that we are doing that is our Instagram account, Fossil Free Illinois, where we are making content all of the time to do this. I am in charge of our Reels team. Yes, we're pumping out Reels, we're pumping out graphics. I don't want to toot our own horn or anything, but I think we have one of the strongest student social media accounts for an activist movement. So I think and we are always down for more people. So if you want to help out with making those reels, making those graphics, whether you know how to do it or not, there's a spot for you on this team to get better at it and plug in and start doing that. And it's a great way to put your artistic abilities to use in a way that's going to actually like further the narrative and make good things. Because again, like if people don't know what divestment is, it is very hard to say that you support divestment. So yeah, the one final thing I will plug, the Anarchist Collective on campus has community dinners for Gaza from 6:30 to whenever they end. They are all vegan. They are all able to accommodate all dietary restrictions. They are all typically very, very good. And if I didn't think they were good, I wouldn't say that. I am a picky eater.
Period.
If I didn't like them, I wouldn't say it, but they are really good. So if this is... And it's also just a great space to meet other people who are lefties like ourselves. It's a great place to plug into the community. You don't have to agree with everything that's being said by everyone all the time. That's the point. It's a place where we can like have these conversations, get to know our comrades, get to know other people who think like we do. So that's something I always think is important to mention. Come to these meetings, Channing Murray Foundation. Again, they're not meetings. It's just come chill. I go there and just do homework.
Yeah.
But then I can just be with other people who think like I think. And I think that is increasingly something that we need in our lives just to stay sane, frankly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If I can add one more note as well, if you want to come out and this will be the first protest, I believe, that I've heard about happening on campus. It's going to be our protest. FFI is the organizer, but SECS is supporting and involved. So it'll be September 19th. That's a Friday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We'll be meeting at Alma Mater at 12. Come out, wear orange. If you have any like concerns about safety, please wear a mask. Please protect your identity. And yeah, please come out September 19th.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you guys. I'm actually, as you know, I'm doing labor talks at Channing Murray Foundation starting September 24th. It'll be once a month from September through November, so just 3 months. And I actually wanted to tell you guys real quick about Red Youth Rising. It's an organization that I am on the national committee for, in which we're currently, we are a communist group associated with the American Party of Labor, specifically for youth ages 15 to 28, I believe, is what youth is considered. And our first organizing campaign currently is around tenant unions. So if you guys are interested in organizing around that as well, please stay in contact. But yeah, this was really amazing, and I really appreciate you guys taking, just an hour out of your day to talk about this, because it is so important, and so many more people need to know about it. So
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. We love what you're doing here. It's just so
Thank
important to
you.
talk about these issues. Yeah, of course. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great.
Thank you. Yes. All right.